screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempt a mental robbery, executed sloppily. The pomp proceed as mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to Rogue Soul, where we have talked multiple times about the potential evils of birthing a child in a hospital, in the modern way of birthing, all of the various ills that come along with that, and how difficult it can be to avoid them if you do end up in a hospital, or if you chose to be in the hospital to have the birth, all the way from when they may administer Pitocin to, how they actually maybe induce a C-section instead of, the vaginal canal, and instead of letting a woman birth naturally and maybe take a lot longer, they got to hurry it up to get to the golf course. And, all these sorts of things can damage this situation, to cutting the umbilical cord too soon and taking it away right away, and taking your baby away from you right away, and weighing it and poking it and prodding it, and then cutting apart its genitalia if it's a boy. So all sorts of, we could go on. There's the stuff that they smear in the baby's eyes that's unnecessary. That's all the vaccines that they want to give the baby. There's just a million traumas and horrors, most of which have never, ever once been proven to be helpful for your baby or for you. And so it's very questionable why we do many of these things. Most of them, I think, are expedient and or create a profit for a pharmaceutical company, and there's some combination therein. Of course, there's always the question of why would we do this in such a horrible way instead of a positive way, which we know is possible. And is there something more nefarious behind that motivation? Perhaps, up to you to decide. But today we're going to look at something that I think even those of us who have looked down all those rabbit holes and come out the other side maybe haven't encountered before. And it's the idea that the ultrasound is also harmful prior to you ever getting to the birth itself. Here, perhaps being harmed by the ultrasound. So let's look into some interesting aspects of that today here on Rogue Soul. I would love for you to go to roguesoul.org to see everything that I do, get one-on-one sessions with me, tarot, past life, sound healing, blessings, and more. You can also, technically, you can still become a healer with us. We started last night our first class of heart-centered healers. Such a powerful group. So excited about this group of healers that stepped up this time. And I've had people start late before, because I record all the classes and they're there for you for even a month after you start, or sorry, rather finish the class. This is a certification-based class. I offer this certification through Rogue Soul and the Association for Spiritual Integrity. This is for anybody who feels called to energy healing, spiritual healing, just to deepen their spiritual path in general, to learn these skills to apply to themselves, to their animals, to their friends and families, or to the broader public as a professional offering. It's for any of those. So Become a Healer is right here on the main page. You can click on that and check out Heart Centered Healer. And if you do want to join us, you can. Like I said, I usually let people join late up to the third class, and after that it starts to get, it's not really going to be as good for you to jump in that late, but you can do it. So if you feel like you missed it, or you meant to, or you want to, it's still there. Check it out, join us. And that's Heart Centered Healer. That's roguesoul.org. My books are here as well. Like I said, you can schedule with me. Check out the shop. There's powerful orgone accumulators here that are beautiful, that will beautify, uplift any of your spiritual practice, especially if you're doing heart-centered healing and more. Meditation, manifestation, all of that. You can also get custom pillars and votives. And you can also donate here in the shop on roguesoul.org. Thank you to all of you who support by donating or by being a paid subscriber at rogueways.substack.com. This is where I publish everything that I write. I'm an author, and so all of my articles, history, religion, mysticism, spirituality, society, politics, and more. There's so much here for you. Most of it's free. You can come subscribe for free. I think it's a great idea if you like to keep in touch with what I do or just read really interesting things. And if you're a paid supporter, then you not only support the show and what I do, it's a really nice boost for me. I appreciate you so much. You also get the channeled messages from the spiritual ancestors as they come through me in that divine channel. So that's there for you at rogueways.substack.com. Their messages are amazing. I appreciate you. By the way, I don't know what it is. A lot of you, it's awesome. A lot of you are reading, you're reading these. It's probably because they get emailed to you. You're reading them in your email instead of going to the rogueways.substack.com to read them. And that is something you can choose to do once you're a subscriber, paid or free, is have them sent to you so that you can read them in the email. But then you reply instead of coming here to comment. And I would love if you're going to say something about any of these articles, critical or not, if you come here and comment, because it increases the likelihood that other random followers might find these articles as well. It starts the conversation. So we'll love to get your commentary here, not just in my personal inbox. So thank you all either way. Thanks for being a paid or free subscriber, and thanks for reading rogueways.substack.com. So we'll start here. This is from Mercola. This was actually last January 2025 that I saw this article from him, and he always offers the PDF version, so you can store his articles forever if you want, if you like them. So whenever I find one that I think is really good, I keep it, I put it in a folder somewhere, and then I sometimes use it for shows like this, and sometimes just as a reference. But this is from Mercola, who I like a lot, and he has this article called "The Forgotten Dangers of Ultrasound." He always does this helpful story at a glance where he tells you what the article is about ahead of time. And so we're going to read through this. He says, the medical field has historically exposed mothers to harmful treatments for infants. After efforts to stop routine fetal x-rays, prenatal ultrasound was introduced as a safe alternative. So they were x-raying babies in the womb, and they realized maybe that's not so great, so they switched to ultrasound, which is sound based, that sounds more natural. But x-rays and sound, they're both fundamental to the universe, but anything in the wrong dose or at the wrong time can be harmful. Even water, right, can drown in it. So they introduced this supposedly safe alternative ultrasound. He says, while ultrasound is considered safe, a century of forgotten research shows that it can harm tissues. Evidence shows early fetuses are especially vulnerable to ultrasound, with trials in China that gave ultrasound before abortions revealing clear damage to fetal tissues. So China is interesting because they're horribly evil, and so they can get away with some research that is just off the table for almost everyone else. And that's why we got those amazing bodies exhibition where you got the whole entire nervous system of a whole body, or all of its veins and capillaries, and 3D, really amazing stuff. But then you realize, like, most of these people were imprisoned, probably for political reasons, maybe tortured and then killed for their organs and their bodies. So you're like, well, this is really dark, right? And this is a little bit the same. They hey, we're going to give you a forced abortion, and by the way, we're going to study you first too. We're going to study this. So we've got evidence out of China that we wouldn't have otherwise gotten. So it's a helpful thing, maybe even a beautiful thing in some cases, even though it was gotten not in the best way. And clear damage to fetal tissues. So it's not actually contested. It's not debatable whether or not it harms the fetus. It's just a question of whether or not you care. And this is the same with all of the birthing issues. Do you care that it would be probably better for your baby to keep the umbilical cord attached for a longer period of time, maybe up to 20 minutes, half an hour longer? Some people do it until it naturally falls off. That's almost a week sometimes. No damage has ever been recorded from that. But there is unavoidable and unstudyable damage that might be done from taking that away too soon. The umbilical cord's still pulsing when they cut it. That's why they have to clamp it. The connection is still vital. It's still active. So it's interesting, right? And it's just your choice whether you care, whether you want to do something about that, or whether you don't. I try not to judge. Emphasis on the try, right? And I also know some people really just aren't in a position where they can choose. They're not conscious. They're being bullied. There's all kinds of horror that goes on in these situations, but ideally, if you really want your fetus, your baby, to have the best chance in life, you would take that and you'd say, oh, well, I'm not doing any ultrasounds. At the very least, not in the first 2 trimesters, right? Maybe later, when most of the really sensitive brain, heart, nerves, and all this sort of sensitive stuff is already pretty fully developed, maybe then, but definitely not before, and maybe not at all or ever, because there's clear damage to fetal tissue. He says the US harms are dose dependent. In 1992, despite safety concerns, the FDA raised permissible US levels 8-fold, which may have contributed to the rise of chronic childhood illness. We'll never know, because this is just like radiation in the US. In other countries, they're like, well, radiation does clear damage to biological, all tissues, all biology, all life. And so we'll limit, what cell phones can have, what towers can have, and what this, that might be a thing of the past in other countries too. I don't know. But for a long time, at least, they had these really actually safe limits. And the US was like, oh, we'll do 1,000 times that. It's cool. Fry these bugs. We don't care. Right. So they raised it for the ultrasound too, 8-fold. So even if we had it at a level where the ultrasound level was lower and the frequency we were getting ultrasounds was lower, and so maybe we were doing less harm, now we're 8 times that. Now we're in that, the clear damage to fetal tissues that China saw is 8 times worse than it was before. That's since 1992. That's probably most of the people we know, right? A lot of people born since then or having babies since then. And then he says here, the benefits of prenatal US ultrasound are often exaggerated, leading to unnecessary treatments that harm both mothers and infants. So what are the benefits to the ultrasound? In general, it might be that you can see that this child is clearly, got some big issues and not much else. Do you want to know the gender? Sure, a lot of people do. It's exciting, but also, is it worth damaging the baby to find out? I mean, you're going to find out the way that most of humanity ever did. And when that happens at birth, right? So yeah, there's a lot of sketchiness about ultrasound, and I didn't know until I read this article. I thought ultrasound seems like the most innocuous thing. Like, who would care about an ultrasound? Why not get an ultrasound? And this next article goes a bit deeper and in a different way, and I thought this was really fascinating too. And this was something I got in my Nourishing Traditions magazine. I always suggest, I think it's a highly a great organization that you can trust and is great to support. It's the Weston A. Price Foundation. You can support Nourishing Traditions and get the quarterly magazine. It's always really great articles in there, info in there, and it's just good to support what you love and what's good. They're all about local, biodynamic, regenerative, good agriculture, good high quality food, taking good care of kids, and getting plenty of whole foods and whole fats in your diet from living animals. So this is called A Dark Force is Penetrating Me, Ultrasound as a Homeopathic Remedy. And they start out, says, say what? A homeopathic remedy made from ultrasound? Yes, it exists. And its development and use has opened up a giant can of worms, especially in regard to children affected with conditions labeled as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism. So when that previous article asked, has this caused harm? Has it caused harm to our children? Don't we know? This new article, working from a homeopathic standpoint, is saying, yeah, it's caused ADD, ADHD, and autism. So that's pretty extreme, right? If you go this route and you trust these methods, way different from the traditional scientific materialist methods, but still a method interesting. And so we'll look into it. Not only it says, can homeopathic ultrasound be helpful to many of these children, but the fact that the remedy works can also help us understand just how damaging the routine use of prenatal ultrasound really is. So they make a homeopathic remedy. The basics are they take something poisonous or something bad and they put it super diluted into essentially a sugar pill. And then you take that tiny bit, in minuscule bit, sometimes just the echo of a bit of poison, and it helps prompt your body to address the initial harm that maybe got buried way back when. Right? There's one way to think about homeopathy. And so they made a homeopathy for ultrasound, meaning there's ultrasound in the pill. And that sounds crazy to most people, but they put ultrasound in the solution that eventually led to this pill, and the tiny amount of that in there then is enough to heal people from ADD, ADHD, and autism. So they say the fact that this works proves that the damage has been done by ultrasound. And I tend to agree with them. There's pretty excessive evidence, actually. It's just, again, not in the way of most studies. It's not as um, quantitative, it's much more qualitative. So we have tons and tons and tons of case studies, basically, but we don't have these sort of like, lots of numbers and graphs and computations. So a little bit different. So they talk about this girl, Caitlin. She was always moving. She couldn't sit still. She couldn't stop talking. They said they could always see it coming. It's like a wave of restlessness would come over her. And then she gets emotional, dramatic. If she eats foods with dyes in it, it gets worse. And Caitlin, from her perspective, said, sitting still is so hard. I feel like I have to move. I feel very frustrated. Waiting for something is hard. I'm always twirling, moving, and tripping over things, kicking the table. Her mom said if she comes into our bed at night, she'll kick us. We'll get a knee or a kick in the gut or the back, or get smacked in the face. Severe restlessness and excessive irritability, even from birth, they said. Her parents reported she was born with a scowl and was a very unhappy baby. It's hard to make her smile. This is from a homeopathic doctor, by the way. So they say because Caitlin, their patient now, had experienced problems from birth, carefully asked for more details about the pregnancy, the delivery, and she had several ultrasounds was one of the things that stood out to this doctor. And she added that Caitlin was trying to get away during the ultrasounds. Have you ever heard that? If you're familiar, if you've had a baby, if you've talked to friends about babies and their ultrasound experiences, I've heard it from my friends who got ultrasounds that the baby seems to jump out of the way once the ultrasound starts, and that sometimes, the technicians are like, oh, they're trying to get away, and have to move all over and try really hard to get the picture. Well, that should alone tell us basically everything we needed to know. The baby doesn't like it. It's trying to get away from it. It's harming it, right? And so there was even a day where they had 2 ultrasound sessions in one day. And so they said the homeopathic doctors thought maybe this is where the problem started, right? And they said, I'd only recently found out there was a homeopathic remedy from ultrasound. The remedy is prepared by treating some water with an obstetric ultrasound transducer at the 3,500 megahertz range used for routine prenatal ultrasounds. It's then prepared into a remedy by a homeopathic pharmacy. Homeopaths, she says, call remedies like these imponderables. Imponderables. You can't even ponder it. You can't even imagine it, right? As a way of describing remedies made from unseen, powerful forces or energies that can profoundly affect living systems. That's so cool. Think about x-rays, magnets, radioactivity. I would wonder if you could add to those categories anything spiritual, right? Some of the negative spiritual forces or emotional. All of which she says are invisible, not immediately felt, but which can have significant effects on our health and not generally for the better. Our modern world is brimming with technical devices emitting such energy, which in addition to ultrasounds include cell phones, computers, microwaves, televisions, MRIs. Thankfully, we now also have homeopathic remedies prepared from all of these. And so she also talks about homeopathic proving, and I found this part so interesting. Homeopathic proving. She says a homeopathic proving is a process in which healthy volunteers take or prepare a homeopathic remedy and carefully monitor and record their experiences, including physical, mental, and emotional symptoms. They may experience both negative effects and healing symptoms from the substance being tried. Both sides of the equation are expressed. When I mentioned Caitlin's case to my colleague, Dr. Roland Gunther, he told me about a proving, both fascinating and disturbing, that he had conducted to find out what an unborn baby might experience from prenatal ultrasound. It says, in the early stages of the process, the provers experienced a lot of irritation, as well as feelings of helplessness, fear, and being invaded and exposed. So what I find fascinating is they don't know what they're testing. They're just taking it, right? And so it is a blind study, as far as I could tell. And I don't know if it's always done that way, but this blind study, therefore. They don't know what they're taking, but they're all experiencing these things and reporting these things, and there's these similarities. So it is scientific, right? I'm just trying to say it's not like most pharmaceutical studies. Irritation, helplessness, and being invaded and exposed. As described in Gunther's online account of the proving, these were typical reactions. So these are actual quotes from the provers. I don't know what they're called, the testers. One said, I feel restless and in a hurry. I'm overstimulated like after too much coffee. I need to rock back and forth on my chair. I am impatient. I had little patience with my family. I'm irritated by the presence of others. I feel invaded, disrespected, raw, and exposed. This energy creates fear. I hear children screaming in silence. Oh my God. I have a sense of great vulnerability and I feel helpless. I feel helpless and hopeless. And the worst one, a dark force is penetrating me. It reminds me of Star Wars. Remember, they don't know what they're testing. So they just feel like a dark force in your brain is like, what do I know of dark forces? Oh, I know Star Wars, right? The people who are misusing the force, the dark side. It reminds me of Star Wars. So dark force is penetrating me. Feel helpless, hopeless. This is what, therefore, we would surmise based on this proving, this is what a fetus feels when it's being ultrasounded. It just doesn't have the words or the ability to remember or to communicate it. All it can communicate is trying to get out of the way of it, right? That's the best communication it's got, and we ignore it and just do it again and again and again. And every time you feel hopeless and helpless and invaded and like a dark force is there and you can't get away from it. You're irritated, you're frustrated, you're scared, you're disrespected, you're raw, you're exposed. Would you like feeling that way? I wouldn't. I haven't. And so, yeah. Caitlin also expressed a similar feeling when they were trying to figure out, how do you actually feel about it? Like, what is it actually? Let's get down to it. She said, I worry when she's having these emotions, right, that they're calling ADD, ADHD, and describing in that way. She said, I worry that something I love and might never get again will get lost. That's crazy. That's a feeling of hopelessness in a way, right? This is a little child saying this when they're asking her, how do you feel when you're restless? How do you feel when this feeling comes over you? Like, what is the actual feeling? I worry that something I love and might never get again will get lost. However, 2 weeks after Caitlin received homeopathic ultrasound 200C, her parents excitedly reported the restlessness is much better. She has way more control over herself now. She can actually sit at the dinner table now. She's never been able to sit through a meal in her life. She's also worrying less and gets less upset if she can't find something. She's still a bit fidgety, but since the ultrasound remedy, she is about 80% better. 80% after 2 weeks of a remedy that science would say has no reason working. But this is like energy healing, like I'm teaching and have taught and do teach, and it's like the work I do. Science can't actually explain it. It could if it did a better job of being science, but it's been so bad for so long, I don't know that it can get there anytime soon. But it doesn't explain it, and it feels like it can't explain it. And homeopathy, I should say, it seems very similar. It has no reason, as far as our logic is concerned, as far as we're taught, right, by materialist science and our media and our society about what we should believe or what works or what doesn't. This has no reason working. There's no mechanistic sort of property here, right? Direct causality. But there is. It's just much more on the level of the subtle, which gets towards the level of what we would call the spiritual or the energetic. It's information based, right? When we get down to it, in heart-centered healing, as all of my students learn, and will learn if you're in it, and will learn if you choose to join us late. It's information based. It's all information in the end. And when you're healing yourself or others, what you're doing is removing the untrue or old or damaging information, and you're replacing it with good, true, and beautiful information. If you want to get down to it, right? If you want to call it something besides source or spirit or energy, right? It's information. And everything is. The whole universe is just information. It's another way of saying it's just light, or it's just sound, or it's just waves, or it's just energy. It's just information. It's just consciousness. So the worry approved autism also seems to be connected to ultrasounds. And so she describes all of her many autistic patients who are growing larger and larger all the time, right? We're getting higher and higher rates of autism, and how they also seem to have this ultrasound injury, essentially, and that it can also be treated in this homeopathic way. And then their autism symptoms improve. Again, sometimes, 80% or so, sometimes 100%. There's a lot of people who think like, oh, you can't do anything about it. It's not true at all. It's bullshit. In fact, a million people have found that you can treat the gut, and the gut will be the key to essentially improving the vast majority, if not healing completely, most or all autism symptoms. Allegedly, go talk to your doctor. I'm not a physician, and all the other legal things I have to say. But yeah, it talks about ultrasound and other sort of radiation technologies opening the gut and making it sort of leaky, and this causes Crohn's and some of these other disorders, and that causes all sorts of things in your body, because your gut is like the center, right, where you're taking in all your nutrients and transforming them and transporting them around the body, and it's a second brain, and it's this very intense area of your body, and if it gets damaged, then so many other things are going to go wrong for you. It's the core, right? So she goes on with many stories. It's actually a rather long article. I'm not going to read through them all. You can find this at westernprice.org if you search for ultrasound or maybe homeopathy. I think this author does homeopathic stories quite frequently, because I've read a few others of hers that are also really good, and also on topics that you wouldn't necessarily think you could treat with homeopathy. And another really interesting one I'll just drop for you is I also do past life readings and work with people with their past life karma. And so to make this current life even better and your soul trajectory from here on even better. So you can check that out too on roguesoul.org, or right below wherever you're watching or listening. You can click schedule a session. But she talks about some remedies that are treating things that couldn't have happened in this life. And really young children are being treated for things like rage, or I don't remember what the actual diagnosis was that she made, but it was clearly connected to this child having murdered or been murdered. And then the homeopathic remedy for that worked for them. And just crazy things. There's things where kids seem like they're demonically possessed, right? And they're doing just wildly dark stuff. And then you treat them for something random like that. It's like a past life thing. And all of a sudden, all of that goes away. So really, really interesting. Again, it's an information thing, as all healing is, and it just works with the most simplest aspect of that. So I like this a lot. I want to throw it out there. Is not only do we want to consider, how are we going to have kids? How are we going to keep our fetuses growing well within us, and then birth them well, and then grow them up well? Those are all the best questions to ask about having a child. But also, what are we going to use when we have to treat them? What kind of modalities are we going to go to first? And I always say Western medicine has plenty of things it can do for you, especially if you've broken an arm, or you got some major blunt force trauma. Sure, a lot of other things, surgery is great, but a lot of other stuff is just left out completely and never addressed. And so things like homeopathy and energy healing are where we then go for all that stuff. So if you're there and you're listening to this and you're like, I am having a baby and I never thought of this, and what am I going to do now? There's so much for you out there. If you have friends who are, and they've never thought about it, you want to help them out, just find someone in your community who is doing like a doula work, or midwifery, or this sort of planned, supported, more holistic support for having a baby. I liked this. This is just a random site I pulled up that's near me. But they talk about the possible things you can do, right? Water birth, natural birth. So no medicine, no Pitocin, no, epidural, but just a lot of natural ways to help the process go much smoother, easier, and less painfully, but without all of that kind of modern pharmaceuticals. Vaginal birth, prenatal care, postpartum care. It's a big deal too for mamas. Lactation support and more. That's just a smattering of things that they offer, but you can get this kind of support. And where I grew up, at least, there's a lot of hippies. So, I don't know. And I don't know, the left has become like the party of big pharma. So I have no idea where this is all at nowadays. But where I grew up, even low income women had access to that kind of birthing center, more natural sort of birthing situation because there was just so much support for it. So even if you feel like you don't have a lot of resources, you're on Medicaid or something, you still might be able to find support in these sorts of areas. So I highly encourage you to look into it, to keep it in mind if you're ever going to have a child, or if you know people who are having children, to at least ask the question of them, have you ever considered that ultrasound can damage your child sometimes for the rest of their existence? It's worth a thought. And until you think those things, ask those questions and share with people you love. Travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
Glued to them screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones, a holly suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger